This video is brought to you by Bespoke Post. Bespoke Post is a monthly membership club delivering awesome boxes of top-shelf goods from under-the-radar brands. Every month, Bespoke Post introduces its members to cool new products, outdoor gear, barware, home and kitchen goods, clothing, and much more. They even do live oysters based on a preference quiz that you fill out. It's free to join. You can skip a month anytime if you want. They sent me a few things, a few boxes. This first one was the brew box, and as it says here, beer making kit contains everything you need. It's got the pipes, and it's got this giant gallon bottle. It's got the what do they call it? The beer making mix? Make some beer? Yes, I will. Every box has about $70 in retail value, but costs only $45, and you can preview the box before it ships and decide if you want to keep it, swap it, or skip the month for no charge. Bespoke's box lineup is also constantly changing each month. It's great for you, but also a great gift. Another box they sent me contained this, which this was the Weekender box, and it is a weekend bag. You can pack it full of your stuff. It's got a great thick canvas lining and metal supports, nice solid handles, just a really nice bit of kit. Right now, you guys can get 20% off your first box by going to bspk.me/sideprojects20 or just click the link in the description below and enter sideprojects20 at checkout. And now today's video. Before smart bombs, we had dumb bombs. They relied solely on the skill, reflexes, and mathematical prowess of a pilot. Not only would a bomber have to fly a metal plane carrying a ton of munition while dodging anti-aircraft fire, they'd also have to do complex trigonometry to calculate a bombing triangle if they had any hope of hitting their target and making the whole risking their lives thing worthwhile. Effectively, bombing was a numbers game. If you wanted something destroyed, dropping hundreds of bombs in the rough vicinity of your target, taking out whole streets and hundreds of civilians was really your only option. To give you an idea of the accuracy of this carpet bombing approach, in 1944, 47 bombers conducted a raid on one steelworks in Japan. Of the 835 bombs released, only one made impact, and 40 bombers were lost. Unsurprisingly, the heavy civilian casualties and wasting of huge amounts of cash by dropping dumb bombs near but not on a target was losing popularity. Bombs with some kind of guidance system were needed, and scientists were up for the challenge. But not all of their early attempts were good ideas. One of our personal favorites is, of course, Project Pigeon. In World War II, American behaviorist B.F. Skinner trained pigeons to sit inside a bomb and peck the image of the target displayed on a screen. If the bomb started to go off track, the target would move to the side. When the pigeon pecked it, the sensors would pick up the movement and steer the bomb back in the right direction. Remarkably, the training was actually quite successful, but the project was cancelled when the National Defense Research Committee saw more promise in electronic guidance. And Skinner explained, "Our problem was that no one would take us seriously," which, all we can say to that is shocking. World War II was the first time these electronic and poultry-free smart bombs, or precision guidance munitions, were seen in combat. Before then, the German Condor Legion had struggled with accuracy when attempting to bomb maneuvering ships during the Spanish Civil War. So, in 1938, engineer Dr. Max Kramer began experimenting with the use of radio-controlled spoilers on the tail of 250-kilogram bombs. He wanted pilots to be able to guide them after launch. Fatally, his work was successful, and by 1940, the 1,400-kilogram armor-piercing Fritz bomb had been fitted with wings, an aerodynamic nose, and a box-shaped tail housing guidance controls. This transformed it into the Fritz X, and it earned its title of the world's first smart bomb. On the 3rd of September 1943, the World War II armistice was signed between Italy and the Allies. The terms of this required the delivery of the remains of Mussolini's naval fleet to Malta. Germany had begun their attack on Italy quickly, and the route was out of reach of Allied air defenses. Before the Fritz X, the battleships would have been vulnerable to bombing by German planes, but the bombers' accuracy was low, and the ships would have at least stood a good chance. Instead, the guided Fritz X bombs hit with alarming precision. The first bomb to make impact with the flagship Roma struck its its bridge and instantly killed Admiral Begamini. The second buried itself deep in the bridge before detonating, creating a gaping hole in the hull and starting fires that raged throughout the vessel. It took 20 minutes of panicked efforts to save the ship before it exploded, breaking the Rona in two. 1,350 crew members perished as the two halves of the ship sank. Germany continued their assault on Allied vessels with ease. 2 days later, the Savannah, headed to support the landings of Allied forces in Italy, was next to encounter the Fritz X. U.S. Army General Mark W. Clark recalled the scene caused by the smart bomb crashing deep into the ship before exploding. Instantly, all was chaos, smoke, blood, and death. Nearly 200 were killed by the resulting blazes, with many suffocating in their gun turrets. The boiler fires were put out, and it seemed likely that the remaining crew would go down with the ship. However, incredibly, they managed to relight the boilers and crawl half-sunk to Malta. Unfortunately for 4 survivors, they became trapped in the radio room and had to wait another 60 hours before rescuers managed to breach the steel deck and get them to shore. Attacks continued relentlessly, with Germany employing a second radio-controlled guided weapon, the HS-239, and hitting a ship per day. Malta was filling up with battered Allied vessels as scientists tried desperately to come up with ways of preventing the attacks. The obvious strategy was to jam the radio signals, but they needed an intact bomb to determine the correct radio frequency, and the Germans had equipped them all to self-destruct in the event of a failed detonation. Fortunately, their prayers were answered when 9 Dornier bombers were discovered abandoned at Foggir, armed with the Fritz X and the HS-293s. Unfortunately, the breakthrough hadn't come quickly enough to prevent the largest loss of US troops at sea in a single incident. On the 25th of November 1943, 14 Luftwaffe aircraft attacked a convoy of troop ships on their way to Alexandria. The Allies defended the ships with smoke screens and anti-aircraft fire, but one of the Fritz X bombs made it through and hit the Rona. More than 1,100 died. They burned in the fires that raged throughout the ship or drowned in the 5 to 6 meter swells that made it impossible for the rest of the fleet to launch their lifeboats. In the months that followed, successful attacks grew fewer as the Allies deployed electronic jamming to block the guidance of the bombs. Anti-ship attacks reduced, and German scientists worked to overcome the jamming with wire and television guidance. They also tried to develop new types of weapons, such as jet fighters and long-range rockets. Fortunately, their work was fruitless, and it abruptly ended with Hitler's demise in 1945. Now, while they were the inventors, Germany weren't the only nation to see potential in the guided bomb. Inspired by the attack on the Rona, the US took up the research and development of smart bombs themselves. They invented the BAT, a radar-guided glide bomb, and the Aizon, a radio-controlled bomb. Both were semi-successful, with the BAT sinking multiple enemy destroyers and Aizon taking out 27 Japanese bridges, including the previously impervious 300-foot steel bridge at Pianmana. However, despite these innovations, the military still favored dumb bombs. The smart technology of the BAT and Aizon just weren't good enough to justify the cost. Their radio signals could be jammed, just as the Allies had done to the Fritz X, and the bombers were left at risk after deployment as they had to stay in the area to steer the bomb with a joystick. Plus, it had taken 450 Aizons to take out those 27 Japanese bridges. It wasn't until the war in Vietnam that America would revisit the smart bomb. It was the well-defended bridges that posed a particular problem to the Rolling Thunder air campaign. The 540-foot Dragon Jaw Bridge at Than Hoa, for example, had withstood a 1965 airstrike from 80 aircraft carrying 750-pound bombs and bullpup missiles. They caused almost no damage, with one pilot claiming the bullpup simply bounced off the bridge. The next day, they tried with 300 bombs, and again they had little success. The only dent made was achieved by dropping large mines upstream and leaving them to float down and crash into the bridge. However, it was only a small dent, and the bridge stayed standing. One man particularly frustrated by the Vietnam Bridge problem was Colonel Joseph Davis, commander of the Air Proving Ground at Eglin, Florida. He was looking for a weapon with the strength of a bomb that could be dropped from a great enough height to avoid enemy fire and hit within 30 feet of a target. He took an interest in the works of Weldon Ward, an engineer at Texas Instruments, who proposed the idea of laser-guided missiles. Davis called Ward in for a meeting and presented him with photos of Dragon's Jaw Bridge. In them, 800 pockmarks from previous unsuccessful bomb attacks could be seen, and countless more were hidden under the water. Frustratingly, the bridge was still standing. Davis offered him the opportunity to develop his laser idea, provided he could deliver it within 6 months and for less than $100,000, and have a proposal submitted by 7 a.m. on Monday. Word rose to the challenge, and for $99,000 exactly, he invented the first laser-guided smart bomb kit. The beauty of it was that it consisted of a set of components that could be bolted onto an existing bomb. This lowered the cost to $4,000 and provided great flexibility for the Air Force. The bombs required 2 aeroplanes to work. The first would identify the target and focus a laser beam on it. The second would drop the bomb. Once launched, the bomb's seeker head would find the target by sensing the reflected energy of the laser. The smart bomb had no means of propulsion beyond gravity, so it'd steer by moving control fins to generate drag. The team spent the next few years overcoming the internal politics of the Air Force and development issues until it was ready to be used in combat in Vietnam in 1968. But just before it was fully developed, the White House called a stop to the bombing of North Vietnam. While delaying its debut, it allowed the Air Force 4 more years of development and training, aiding in its future success. The first ever laser-guided bomb run was mind-blowing for both the pilot and the troops on the ground. Ed Cobley, former fighter pilot and author of War for the Hell of It, A Fighter Pilot's View of Vietnam, described the experience. He was one of 4 pilots involved that had been tasked with aiming the laser at North Vietnamese gun installations. These had anti-aircraft capabilities and were so well defended that conventional bombers couldn't touch them without being shot down. Cobley's team was sent in, communicating with a soldier on the ground who was unaware he was about to witness a laser-guided bomb. He seemed pretty unconvinced that further bombing could do much more than rile up the gun teams who'd punish him with a night of fire. But Cobley found his target, and the bomb launched and scored a direct hit, completely obliterating the gun and the whole team. When they went in for a second go and decimated another gun, the man on the ground just couldn't believe it, coming on the radio to say, "That was the best bombing I have ever seen. Come back and work with me anytime. You guys are hot." Instead of spending that evening being shot at by angry gun teams, he was now faced with a retreating enemy and renewed hope. In fact, he might have been forgiven for thinking that he just witnessed war-winning technology. But this wasn't the case. While laser-guided smart bombs were impressive, they had many flaws. The main one being that the laser pilots had to keep the target in view at all times. This was impossible through smoke, dust, or even bad weather, and, well, Vietnam had a lot of that. That's not to say they didn't have any impact, though. Between February 1972 and February 1973, the Air Force dropped more than 10,500 laser-guided bombs, scoring 5,100 direct hits and 4,000 within 25 feet. That's an incredible probability of taking out your target. In the first 3 months alone, they destroyed 100 bridges. Remember that Dragon's Jaw bridge? After a false start in April 1972, which was foiled by the wrong type of clouds, they tried again in May, and just 14 jets managed to achieve what the previous 871 had not. They launched only 26 laser-guided bombs and destroyed the western span of the bridge, cutting off a key North Vietnamese supply route. Vietnam proved smart bombs to be an effective weapon, but the US Air Force couldn't exactly have their strike schedule dictated by clouds forever. A new method of guidance would need to be developed. Their bombing campaign during Operation Desert Storm in the Gulf was being disrupted by dust, fog, and smoke, and so research began into an all-weather guided munition in 1992. One controversial method stood out: GPS. There were relatively few GPS satellites at the time, and their use in weapons was completely untested. However, they went ahead with it, and development took place at Eglin Air Force Base. With the help of a few electronics and technology companies, they had the first system ready to go in 1993, and testing began in various weather conditions. Tests were successful, not as accurate as laser-guided bombs, but capable of use when it was cloudy, so that was a big winner. Also, the pilot could fire and forget. They didn't need to hang around to guide the bomb and could get out of harm's way more quickly. It took some years of development, but by 1997, the first Joint Direct Attack Munition, JDAM kits, were created, and they're still in use today. Just like Word's lasers, the kits are guidance systems that can be attached to conventional bombs. They use an internal computer program to position themselves and acquire their targets. It's even possible for the pilot to update their target after launch by sending new coordinates. The only downside is that the price is higher at $25,000, but this is still much cheaper per hit than conventional bombs. JDAMs quickly took over from laser-guided bombs and became the weapon of choice in the Kosovo Air War, Operation Allied Force. While guided bombs only accounted for 35% of the munition used, they were responsible for 74% of the targets destroyed. Today, every squadron deployed with JDAMs has a staggering hit rate of 97%. By the time Operation Iraqi Freedom began in 2003, 68% of bombs were guided, with 22.4% as JDAMs. Now, instead of sending in large forces and suffering heavy casualties, the US was able to conduct warfare much more remotely. They could destroy supply lines and command centers without a single troop on the ground nearby. It was also possible to reduce civilian casualties, as the precision of the guided bombs could pick off individual buildings rather than destroy whole streets. However, the system isn't infallible. GPS is as vulnerable to GPS jammers as the old radio smart bombs were to radio frequency jammers. And when you throw in EMPs, hacking, and any number of electronic attacks, there are as many ways for a target to fight back as there have always been. In addition to this human error when using JDAMs has led to a number of tragedies. The single largest case of civilian casualties during Operation Desert Storm resulted from 2 smart bombs that hit an air raid shelter in Baghdad in 1991. Tragically, the majority of the victims were women and children who'd sought shelter from the near-constant bombings. Sabia Ubhud recalled leaving her 4 children in the shelter as they were too scared of the bombs to sleep at home. They felt safe there, as the US would have no reason to attack a civilian shelter. Unfortunately, US intelligence had identified it as a military compound. When she heard the roar of explosions, Sabia rushed to the shelter, but it was completely destroyed and in flames. She only managed to recover one of the burned bodies of her children. This tragedy illustrates the problem of reliance on satellites for intelligence gathering and launching attacks. From space, it looked like a command center. A person on the ground could have told you the kids were inside. In Operation Allied Force, another devastating mistake claimed the lives of 3 civilians. A JDAM operator intended to destroy the Yugoslav Federal Directorate for Supply and Procurement and hit the nearby Chinese embassy instead. What caused the fatal error? Intelligence officers planning the attack had relied on a bad map. Yep, it was just outdated, and the buildings were labeled incorrectly. Had someone been on the grounds, they might have noticed the distinct Chinese roof star, bright red Chinese flag, or, the large bronze plaque that read Chinese Embassy. When a dumb bomb misses its target and kills civilians, it's unfortunate luck. When a smart bomb does, it feels much more deliberate. China were quick to call foul play. Riots broke out, and the US embassy in Beijing was attacked by stone-throwing protesters in retaliation. You might conclude, therefore, that no matter how smart your bomb, human error will always have the potential to make it dumb. But what if we take humans out of the equation? Let the computers decide their targets. I mean, it sounds like a fast way to terrifying dystopian-style Terminator future, but near certainty of horrific consequences has never stood in the way of human developments before, and it won't prevent handing over control of smart bombs to artificial intelligence either. And when I say future, I mean past. I mean 2019. It's already been done. Israeli manufacturer Rafael has named the technology Automatic Target Recognition and installed it on their Spice 250 smart bomb. Using AI and deep learning techniques, the bomb can recognize a target based on many characteristics and guide itself to hit it. All the pilot has to do is select the target type, and the bomb does the rest. Beyond that, if the bomb is on its way to destroy, let's say, a tank and spots a more high-value target like an anti-aircraft defense, it can decide to switch targets and take that out instead. Even better, if its communication with the pilot is cut off, it can make these decisions all by itself. And of course, it's not at all alarming that this technology is based on recognition software that has mistaken a moonrise over Norway for a Soviet missile launch and allows my phone to recognize my face about 50% of the time. America are in on the AI action too, developing collaborative small diameter bombs, CSDBs. Potentially more frightening than a single deadly rocket bomb, these are launched en masse and designed to swarm like insects, explosive insects. The idea is that they'd work together to make decisions about target priorities, and if cut off from their human or attacked with a GPS jammer, they'd communicate with each other to share information and inform their choices. Because flying bombs that can think for themselves and plan as a team just sounds incredibly reassuring, doesn't it? So I really hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.